Well, I really don't know what I'm talking about either because, we did a poll a
That's
couple
why I
of weeks
like these.
I know you do. Boys and girls, we have a whole team of folks who help us behind the scenes and all my podcasts over here. We got people who help us with YouTube and people who help us with social and people who help us like Dave Silva. He's our producer for this show. So he's doing the
But he
cameras.
doesn't really help us. He
Graphic.
hinders us most of the time.
Okay. Can you just let me get this thought out? I'm just saying we got a lot of people pulling in the same direction, working on the same stuff. And then occasionally the star of the show will pop his head up. I don't know, maybe like the groundhog once a year, and he'll say, "Hey, no, we're gonna record tomorrow morning first thing, and I ain't talking about that. I want to talk about this." And so that's what we're doing today. We did a poll a few weeks back about tag teams. Dudley's won, Nasties came in second.
We did the Dudleys.
We'll do the Nasties.
We did the winners.
And you were like, "Nah, I want to talk about booking." And so we're going to be talking about, and this is something that we have teased for years. I actually get questioned about this at least once a month for the past several years. When are you going to talk about the evolution of creative? Well, I guess this will be like part one of that because I'm sure there will be a whole lot of conversation about the evolution of creative inside of WWE. But today, we're going to travel around the country and talk about the different booking philosophies and mentalities from the heads of the major 5 families. No, I'm not talking about the mob. I'm talking about territory wrestling.
Well, but let me explain to you because you're sitting there going, okay, Bruce got a hair up his behind and just wanted to, this, that, or the other. But inside, let me give you a little bit of background. So, CM Punk, I'm giving you information. I probably shouldn't, but CM Punk, we spent a weekend here in Connecticut when he first came back, and he came over to the house, and we went through like this plethora of stuff in the other room over there. And he was just asking so many questions about, booking and bookers and who was this and who was that? Why did they do it this way? Why did they do it that way? And I had some of Paul's old booking books from the 40s, and he was going through it. Yeah. And he was just going through it, mesmerized, and probably would still be here if I didn't kick him out. But that was kind of the genesis of it was, we've never really just kind of got into people think they understand,
right?
What a booker is or what the business was like back then. And back then it was even, a million times more difficult to get into and actually get into the inner workings and to be able to get into the mind of the guy that really was running things, who was really putting all those matches together and the angles together and bringing in the talent and what have you. And I had a very innocent way because I was a kid and I was hanging around with Mr. Bosch. So they knew that like I worked there. I don't think a lot of times, at least at first they realized how young I was, but they would use me as a sounding board to throw ideas at me and go, hey, what if we did this or what if we did that? And did you like that? Did you think that really pissed the crowd off enough, or was the crowd really happy on different things like that? And I learned in a way that was different than most because I actually got to go pick Bill Watts up at the airport, go take Gary Hart, to go get something at Jack in the Box, and just had time to be able to, in an innocent way, not knowing, because I really didn't know. I wasn't smart to the business. Ask them questions.
Right.
And walk in on, if I wasn't gimped up and had a longer cord, I would walk in and show you the actual ring where I walked in for the first time and saw Paul Bosch, Gary Hart, and Bronco Lubitsch huddled around a ring. And I'll take a picture of it, send it so Dave can insert it here. And they had these clay figures, and they had the clay figure tied up in the ropes and hanging backwards. And Gary was explaining, I believe it was Bruiser Brody, was going to hook his leg in the rope like this, brother, and then he comes back and he's hanging like this, so therefore he can't go anywhere. That's where we get the DQ. Now, a lot of times when I would walk in with coffee and drinks, they would stop talking. But it mesmerized me that they were playing with what I consider toy wrestlers in a toy wrestling ring to lay out a finish for that evening's matches. And oh my God, that's how they do it. And it was one of those aha moments that I just, I hung on to forever, because I thought that, man, they do this every week when they're back there in these closed door meetings. They've got toy wrestlers that go, he's going to get him like this, then he's going to pin him like that. And that wasn't true, but that was
it happened that one time.
It happened that time, yes. And then I happened to, walk in with the tab and the coffee and Coke and all that good stuff. Coca-Cola.
Yes.
Cola.
Hey, so let's talk about the different territories. And I guess we'll start, we'll go left to right. We'll talk about Don Owen, based out of Oregon. Don was a promoter for over 60 years, probably one of the longest running territories and promoters. I mean, and super well respected. Pacific Northwest Wrestling was one of the cornerstones of the NWA. Tell us about Don Owen.
Yeah, well, so Don Owen ran Portland, Seattle, kind of in the whole Northwest part of the states. He didn't necessarily go into Northern California because that was more Roy Shires and what have you. And Don ran a solid territory. You could go there and you could work. You worked every night, and you made a little money. You didn't get rich, unless you're Buddy Rose or Roddy Piper. But even then, they didn't get super rich. But they made money, and they made steady money. And Don was one of those guys. He liked to have control. He would take input from guys that he trusted. People like Stan Stasiak would advise him. And I don't know that Don necessarily until later in life ever really had, a booker all the time. He would have someone he would trust. He had his brother, Elton, who ran Eugene, Oregon. I believe that's correct. And Elton would book Eugene. And Elton was the kind of guy, Elton loved the shoot. Okay. So Elton would have one match every show where he would have the guys go out and, all right, you guys go out and have your match. And whoever wins gets an extra $20 or whatever, and have the guys shoot. Well, the boys being the boys, of course, I think at first some of them bit into it, and I was like, all right, let's go out there. I want that $20. But then they figured out that, hey, we can go out there and work the shoot, and we'll split the money. In later years is exactly what they all did, And I think Tom was like shooter champion for like 3 or 4 weeks, and he would trade it with Kurt Hennig and Brett Sawyer and different guys, and they would go back and forth, put each other over.